tell us what happened. What got you involved in the whole world of cannabis?
I was finishing a cardio-oncology project 7 years in. We were about to get heavily audited, as you can imagine, looking at chemotherapies. And I was pregnant in the lab with my third child, a little boy named Macario. So went over to the hospital, had him, everything was fine. Went home, and Gramps, my husband, noticed that he was foaming at the mouth and he was twitching, which we found out later was he was having uncontrollable seizures. So Macario had a stroke. To this day, we don't know how, when, or why. And ultimately, that wasn't the problem. The problem were these seizures that were not stopping. They did every regimen you can imagine, medically induced coma. Remember, this is a 1-day-old baby, right? So this was just a shock. And ultimately, they removed 40% of his brain. So he had all of his occipital lobe on the left side, all of his temporal lobe. So really just a...
Occipital is usually used for vision, is correct?
Vision, but so much more, depth perception, your ability to grasp onto things. And the brain is very connected, right?
Sure.
So even though you think, well, this part is for that.
Right, but it's known
there's a lot of overlap.
It's known that the primary function of vision occurs in that area, right?
Yes, you would think he would not be able to see with his right eye because he's missing the entire occipital
Right,
lobe.
so they removed all of that.
All of it, yes.
Temporal lobe normally is...
Communication.
Broca's area, recognizing words, creating words.
Yeah, and also depth perception, object perception. So he may go to pick something up and really, grab to the left of it because he would not, it's so much more than being able to see it, right?
Got it. So this all happened, and the remedy they came up with, the doctors, was to remove 40% of his brains to stop the seizures.
Stop the seizures. We knew that the focal point came from the left back brain, so let's just remove it. Let's remove it so that it doesn't do what's called a kindling effect, which is more so a domino effect that could take over the rest of his brain. What kind of quality of life would he have at that point, right? So we agreed to let them do it. They did it. It was a 9-hour surgery. Macario flatlined a few times, had 3 blood transfusions. But came out of the surgery, and we were just told that, this surgery's never been done before, so, let's put him in therapy. He's 2 months old. We're taking him to therapy just so they can move him around. He has a G-tube because he never learned how to eat on his own, obviously. And he was very much a zombie child. And me, as I was not a scientist, I was a mother, and just trying to really give love and support and really took on the role that I might have a child that's going to be very challenged, right? He turned 6 months old, and I think just something clicked in my head where I was like, man, he's not developing. He's 6 months old. He's no different than a newborn baby. He can't even track me around the room. He's not crying. I've got to do something. I've got nothing to lose, and maybe this is why I'm a scientist. So started reading and studying, and what a lot of people don't realize is scientists aren't just in the lab with pipettes and playing with molecules. 90% of that work is done through researching.
Sure.
Reading, right? You're researching what other scientists have done, you create a hypothesis, and then you get into the lab and do work. So that's what I did, but I did it on some mutant level. I mean, I'm studying and reading and just committed to finding an alternative for my son who's on 7 medications, who's a zombie child that I knew developmentally was still going to be like this at 5 years old if we carried on in this way. So long story short, I found cannabis, and not through Google, but through PubMed. I found research papers from Israel and Japan and had to translate some. And yes, the research sucked. I mean, it was like observational studies of 7 people that smoked weed and they felt better. I mean, it was really that bad. But molecularly, there were clues. There were hints, and of course, in science, nothing's ever complete. So I started putting together all of these clues. A lot came from Israel, which is, essentially the grandfather of cannabis. And I started putting it together. I said, man, I think CBD could help my son.